I am Dustin Baker, and this is VikesNow, the August 5th edition. It's Friday. I will be back one time this weekend because I had a car repair come up on Tuesday that took away my VikesNow time. So I always like to do 5 episodes per week, at least in the off season, to keep you guys interested. And this episode should be exciting for the masses because it involves juicy roster cuts, dudes who will not make the team. And I get asked two questions, or in the last 2 weeks, I get asked two questions by colleagues and then fans like yourself, viewers. It's A, are you going to training camp? Usually, every year I go, but this year they got rid of the Saturday night practice, which is usually when I take the whole family with. Alas, they're not doing that. And then for the wife's work schedule and the kids' summer camp schedule, no cigar, so probably not on training camp. The other question I get is about roster cuts. Who's not going to make it? Who is going to make it? So tomorrow I have my 53-man roster projection coming out on VikingsTerritory.com. I spent a lot of time on that this morning, but I figure I can go through the dudes that didn't make it with you guys foremost to get that out of the way. So this isn't going to be a boring 15 minutes of me reading off all the guys that didn't make it and then signing off air. I'm going to go through the notable ones, and then I can maybe at the very end announce all of the guys that aren't going to quite make the cut. So the caveat is that this is my prediction, my projection of men that will not make the team, and I will give rationale for the keynote ones, why they will not. This isn't going to be right. It should be close. I think I know what I'm doing. If it's not, you can savage me all you'd like. But this, from what I have learned about the team, I guess since Kwesi Adofo-Mensah took over with free agency in the draft and then mini camp and training camp, these are the guys that I don't think will make it. So I'll start with the biggies that because you're obsessed with the team. The first is Sean. The caveat is a lot of these guys will go to the practice squad. I have no idea who will end up on the practice squad. Neither do you, because this is a brand new regime. But when I say these guys that I'm about to mention are getting cut, it means that some of them will end up on the practice squad. Others will hit free agency, the open market. So the first, I teased it already, Sean Mannion. Although Kellen Mond hasn't looked overly sharp in training camp, I still think that there is a universe that realizes that he isn't a good backup quarterback at QB2. We've seen it twice. He's not prolific. He doesn't do anything exciting. And they lost last year when they had him in the saddle. And then against the Bears, I think they ended up winning that game. Kudos to Mannion in that 2019 season when they rested starters. But I do think Mond will win the battle and therefore only keep two quarterbacks, and Mannion either goes to the practice squad or goes on the open market. The next one will be a bit of a surprise, and this was a roster math casualty, is Ty Chandler, the running back. So I know that he's got all the upside. He's a rookie. Nothing bad can be said about him. And I think he's pretty cool, and I think he'll actually be on the practice squad, and we know running backs always get hurt. So I do think he'll get some meaningful snaps. But in the 53-man roster, I had to decide if Minnesota will keep 5 running backs. Not usually. The Rams didn't do that last year. I think they kept 3. And I just don't see Madison getting cut. Madison isn't bad. I know it's been very fashionable to predict his release come the end of the month, but I'm just not going to do it. I still think he is a viable RB2, especially because we know Dalvin Cook will be hurt at least 3 games. I think they'd rather turn to Madison than Chandler, and then they can just promote Chandler when Madison is the RB1 during those Cook injury games. So Chandler, I think, will go to the practice squad. That's probably maybe the boldest thing on this list is that the old rookie, remember, Ty Chandler is older than Alexander Madison, despite the fact Madison's played 3 NFL seasons. I think Chandler does not make the cut, but is at a moment's notice on the practice squad. Then BC Johnson, he has to be the odd man out. I have Minnesota keeping 7 wide receivers, and one of them isn't BC Johnson. I struggle with Dan Chisena, figuring out if he makes the cut as the gunner, as a special teams guy. I think he does, and therefore I had to get rid of somebody, and I believe that will be Ola BC Johnson as the odd man out. Now, he's been with the team since 2019, was injured last year, was their version of a WR3 for a couple years, arguably. But I think between Jalen Naylor, Amir Smith-Marset, maybe not Albert Wilson. I think BC is the odd man out. And I'll go through all of the wide receivers that don't make it at the end when I list them off rapid fire, but BC is the notable one. The next two are offensive linemen. I have Austin Schlottman not making the 53-man roster, and I have a decent reason for it. It appears Chris Reed is going to be the backup center, which perhaps means starting center before too long. And between Reed and Bradbury, whoever is C1 and C2, that's enough centers. You don't need another one. So I foresee Schlottman as a free agent addition from March, I believe, as just a summer thing. As always, could be wrong, but if you do this, I've recommended you guys do this 53-man tally. It's not easy to come to 53 without making some cuts that you're like, that's strange. And Schlottman is one of those. I don't think there's anything wrong with him. I just believe that because Reed has emerged as the backup center and not a right guard, that Schlottman doesn't have a place come week one. The next one, who'da thunk it? Wyatt Davis. He has been a footnote essentially since he was drafted. He had that fabulous, junior season for Ohio State, where he was supposed to be a first-round pick, and then he fell to Minnesota at 3. It was a Rick Spielman choice, allegedly. Took Wyatt Davis against the wishes of the coaching staff. At least that's the story that was told. But they just have too many guards now. Yes, the Minnesota Vikings, the team that you've watched since 2018 with shitty guard play, now has too many guards in the mix. And I don't think Wyatt Davis will make the cut. I think he, just kind of like BC, is a math casualty. It'd be great if he turned out to be something cool, because they did end up trading for him with that Darisaw, trade back with the Jets last year. But he hasn't done anything, and I don't see enough of it this summer for him to make the 53-man roster. But we'll take it because there are other viable RG options not named Wyatt Davis. All right, on to the tight ends. These probably aren't considered big names, but for the purposes of our show, going through everything about the Vikings seemingly on a daily basis, I have Ben Ellefson and Nick Muse not making the 53-man roster, and instead Irv Smith, Johnny Munt, and Zach Davidson make the cut, because with Irv Smith's thumb surgery on Tuesday morning or whenever it was, they've tipped their hand on who they like as his replacements. A, Johnny Munt, B, Zach Davidson. And I don't think they're going to keep 5 or 6 tight ends, because why would you? So I foresee Ellefson and Muse being the odd men out, and I don't know if they go to the practice squad. Perhaps Muse, because he's so young and just drafted in April. But you have to shave some of these tight ends away, because they're all kind of like the same guy right now behind Irv Smith. And I think Ellefson and Muse will be the ones on the outside looking in. The next is on the defensive side. Now, that's all the offensive guys that I consider noteworthy for this show. On defense, I do have Luigi Villan as a roster cut. I know he has one of the coolest names that you can imagine, especially for an undrafted free agent. But the edge rushers I foresee Minnesota keeping are Hunter, Smith, Wanham, Robinson, and Patrick Jones. And I don't know that you need more than that. It would be wonderful if Villan proves me wrong, and then perhaps Robinson's the odd man out. But I think Villan will go to the practice squad. He had a pretty meaty guaranteed sum of money for an undrafted free agent, so that leads me to believe they have long-term plans for him. But I don't see it in the math of the 53. Next on defense, the noteworthies. Chris Boyd at cornerback. I think with the draft of young players and Andrew Booth and Caleb Evans, Boyd doesn't earn a spot on the roster. And let's face it, boo-hoo, do you care that Chris Boyd is going to, in my projection, be released? Probably not. But he's been with teams since, 2018 or 2019? So it's noteworthy that a Zimmer corner won't be retained. And then free agent from the Broncos last year, Nate Harrison, he's the one that was on the NFI list to start camp. I don't see Minnesota keeping like 7 or 8 corners. I think Zimmer usually had 6 if the Vikings of yesteryear. But if you pull up the roster to start the season for the Rams, they had 4 cornerbacks last year. And I don't think they'll quite dwindle it down to 4 for this Vikings, because you're basically looking at Booth, Dantzler, Peterson, and Sullivan / Caleb Evans. So you'll read tomorrow if you ever look at my stuff on Vikings territory that I have more than 4 cornerbacks. But I think Hairston might be on the outside looking in because of, are they really going to keep as many as Zimmer did? I also weighed into account what the Broncos did last year on their roster trim down because Ed Donatel was in charge of that defense. It's a tricky exercise again, but I do have a Harrison on the outside looking in. So those are the biggies. Nate Harrison, Chris Boyd, Luigi Villan, going up here on my sheet, Ben Ellefson, Nick Muse, Austin Schlottman, Wyatt Davis, B.C. Johnson, Ty Chandler, and Sean Mannion. Those are the ones that would make you go, oh, I didn't see that coming. Now, if this doesn't bore you too much, I'll go down the entire list of players that I think will be cut, and they're kind of sectioned out by offense and defense, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, blah, blah, blah. And I have them up in a Google sheet because I'm fancy, and I'm going to read them off. Again, Sean Mannion, Ty Chandler, Bryant Kovac, running back, Jake Bargas, the fullback, B.C. Johnson, Myron Mitchell, who's had an outstanding camp. I don't think he'll make the cut. Hopefully I'm wrong and they carve out some other spot and then his ascension to relevance can continue. But for now, not going to do it. Tristan Jackson, Blake Prohl, Thomas Hennigan, Blake Brandel, the tackle, Timon Paris, no thanks. The center 4 on the roster, Josh Sokol, which would be very cool. It's spelled Sokol. It'd be really cool if he turned out to be something cool because we could just call him Josh Skol. Are you with me? Maybe, maybe not. Austin Schlottman, Wyatt Davis, and Kyle Hinton. And then rounding out the offensive players, again, Ellefson, Nick Muse, Sean Byer. Those are all the guys on offense that I don't think from the 90-man roster right now will make the jump to September 11th against the Green Bay Packers. Now, on defense, this was also challenging. Go figure. The easiest spot was the interior defensive line. If you've already done this, great. You took my recommendation. If you're going to sit down and do it over the weekend, get out an Excel document or a Google Sheet, you're going to find the easiest part of the depth chart to trim down is the interior defensive line. These are the guys that I don't have making the cut. T.Y. McGill, T.J. Smith, Julian Taylor, Tyrese Stevenson, and Jonathan Bullard. Nope, I don't have them on the 53-man. Edge rusher was tricky because Andre Mentz, he was a carryover from Donatel from the Broncos. I have him not making it. I won't be stunned if he does. Zach McLeod and Luigi Villan again, not going to do it. And then for off-ball linebackers, not making the team, I have Blake Lynch, Ryan Connolly, and William Quinku. The full heft of cornerbacks is Chris Boyd, Ty Smith, Harrison Hand, Perry Nickerson, and Nate Harrison not making the team. And then at safety, Miles Dorn and Mike Brown I have as cut candidates at the end of the month. And special teams is pretty straightforward. I think that Jordan Berry will ultimately win the job over Ryan Wright. So those are all of the roster cuts. I'll be back on Saturday or Sunday with VikesNow. But that's all we got for Friday, August 5th, and Skol, baby.